Mr. Chairman, Executive Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by expressing condemnation of the mass shooting at Orlando, Florida. And I would like to offer my deepest condolences to the victims, their families, and the government of the United States. It is my honor to be a part of the 20th anniversary of the CTBT. I remember vividly the historic moment when treaty was adopted in the UN General Assembly in 1996, where I was attending as a member of the Korean delegation. The delegations gathered in New York that day had high hopes. When the CTBT was opened for signature, we expected that the vision of a world without nuclear test and eventually without nuclear weapons would be realized in not too distant future. And in fact, the treaty has made a meaningful difference over the past 20 years. Its primary achievement is the establishment of a de facto international moratorium on nuclear testing. It has become nearly a universal norm, with 183 states having signed the CTBT, including 36 of the 44 annexed to states, and 164 states having already ratified it. 20 years have passed, and today we have widespread international support for the CTBT and an essentially functioning verification regime established through its international monitoring system, but without a treaty. Perhaps with the success of the norm against nuclear test explosions, we might have lost a sense of urgency to convert the de facto moratorium into a legal obligation. Mr. Chairman, whatever the cause, the ramifications of this unfinished business can be felt around the world, but nowhere more acutely than on the Korean Peninsula. The DPRK is the only country to have tested a nuclear device in the 21st century, not just once, but 4 times. Indeed, it poses a great threat to international peace and security and seriously undermines the global non-proliferation regime. As a result of its provocations, the DPRK is isolated from the international community more than ever, following its violation of previous Security Council resolutions. The UN Security Council Resolution 2070, which is unprecedentedly robust and effective, was adopted in response to the nuclear test of DPRK. However, this resolution is only as effective as its implementation. The international community must take this opportunity to concentrate on the faithful implementation of UNSCR 2270. Member states of the United Nations are supporting the implementation of the resolution and have made tangible achievements in various fields such as trade, maritime, and finance. This momentum must be sustained in order to have the DPRK change its calculus and abandon its nuclear programs in a complete, verifiable, and irreversible manner. The door to negotiating table remains open, but dialogue for the sake of dialogue is not an option. Indeed, the Republic of Korea is determined to break the vicious cycle of dialogue, compensation, and provocation. The time has come for the DPRK to demonstrate sincerity on denuclearization. Mr. Chairman, the Republic of Korea has strong commitments to the CTBT. It actively participates in international efforts to strengthen the global nuclear non-proliferation regime. It hosted a Nuclear Security Summit in 2012 and the CTBT Jam meeting in Seoul on June 2015. And it will chair the Nuclear Suppliers Group starting next week and the IAEA Nuclear Security Conference in December this year. In this vein, the Republic of Korea will spare no efforts to facilitate the entry into force and universalization of the treaty in cooperation with other member states. Today, we have a great opportunity to rekindle the passion we shared 20 years ago about the need for binding instrument in the field of non-proliferation. As the Executive Secretary often says, many states have said no to nuclear testing. Now, it is time to say never. Let's take the remaining steps to make the vision of the CTBT a reality. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you, Mr. Deputy Minister. And let me now give the floor to the Minister of State for Security Policy and International Cooperation of Hungary, His Excellency Mr. István Mikola. You have the floor, sir.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to address this conference of such outstanding importance for global security. Following up on earlier attempts to limit or partially ban nuclear tests, 20 years ago our states committed never to conduct nuclear tests of any kind anywhere on Earth. On the 24th of September 1996, the depository of the treaty, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Boutros Boutros-Ghali, formally opened the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty for signature. Hungary has been committed to the objectives of the treaty since the very beginning, and we were among the first ones to ratify it back in 1999. Besides, for 8 years, out of those 20, the CTBTO was led by a Hungarian diplomat, Ambassador Tibor Tóth, who had also actively taken part in the drafting process of the treaty, and whose excellent leadership during these crucial years contributed to the success of the organization. As we are all aware, the entry into force of the treaty still remains unfinished business, with 8 Annex II countries that have yet to formally endorse the treaty. However, I believe they share our view that embracing the treaty will enhance their security as well as their international standing. Between 2013 and 2015, Hungary, together with Indonesia, held the position of Article 14 co-coordinator. In that time period, we were striving jointly and individually to reach out the states that have not yet signed or ratified the treaty. For our part, Hungary actively promoted the entry into force of the treaty and its universalization bilaterally as well as at various multilateral fora. While doing so, we put particular emphasis on contacts with African countries. During our tenure, 3 countries, including 2 from the African continent, joined the CTBT community. When our mandate expired, we felt reassured that 2 countries, Japan and Kazakhstan, truly dedicated to the objectives of the CTBT, took over. Hungary remains engaged in promoting the comprehensive ban on nuclear tests in line with our national commitment to nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. With signature by 183 states and ratification by 164 states as of today, the CTBT has achieved nearly universal adherence. Nevertheless, only a treaty in force will confine the chapter of nuclear testing to history books. In nearly 20 years, the CTBT has become an essential element of global security and the provider of a unique monitoring system. It is high time for the treaty to achieve the one thing it hasn't achieved yet, to enter into force. Only by doing so will the CTBT meet its ultimate goal, which is to close the year of nuclear testing once and for all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Next is Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal and Multilateral Relations of Iraq, His Excellency Mr. Omar Barzani. You have the floor.
Mr. Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, at the outset, Allow me to express the firm condemnation of my country with regard to the terrorist attacks in Orlando at in the USA. One event that confirms that terrorism necessitates a united stance at the international level to counter terrorism. As you very well noticed, we in Iraq experience a recurrence of terrorist attacks. However, we would like to confirm that we have made major gains on the ground against terrorists. Mr. President, I have the honor to congratulate the government of Romania on having assumed the chairmanship of this 46th session of the CTBT Preparatory Commission. I wish to equally thank Dr. Lasino Zerbo, the Executive Secretary, for his opening statement and all the effort put into the preparation for this current session. We believe that he will be the conveyor of a very important message, one that would allow for the expedient entry into force of the CTBT. While commemorating this 20th anniversary of the opening for signature of the CTBT, we are holding these important meetings, allowing to highlight important ways to consolidate international effort to allow for a universal non-proliferation regime and disarmament one. We fully align ourselves with the statement of the Group of 77 and China, in addition to that of the Arab Group statement to be made by His Excellency the Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Morocco. Mr. President, this country has ratified the CTBT in 2013. Prior to that date, we had clearly declared that we will abide by all the provisions of the aforementioned treaty through the provision of a specific clause in our Constitution number 91E in 2005. This underlines the firm belief and effort of Iraq to maintain peace and security at the international level. We firmly believe in the utility of the CTBT, the NPT, and their three pillars, that is nuclear disarmament, non-proliferation, and peaceful uses of nuclear energy, which make the very cornerstone of the international non-proliferation regime. Within this same context, the government of Iraq confirms that the creation and establishment of nuclear weapon-free zones and weapons of mass destruction-free zones can be the only and sole way leading to the fulfillment of all international relevant instruments on WMD disarmament. Therefore, we underline the need to create such a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East, one zone that would be free of all weapons of mass destruction. Going back to the implementation of decisions of the two NPT review conferences in 1995 and 2010. Iraq rejects any compromise made on the objectives clearly stipulated in the CTBT. Mr. Chairperson, progress made in nuclear disarmament to this date is not enough when we consider the very possible and real consequences of any use of such a weapon, coupled with an increase of terrorism at the international level. This reconfirms and reaffirms the humanity's strive to counter such weapons of mass destruction. Therefore, we are fully committed with the Austria Declaration and Pledge on humanitarian ramifications of nuclear weapons. Therefore, over 158 states and a number of international organizations and civil society organizations have also supported that pledge. Our document A/RES/70/47 of 2015 welcomed discussions made during conferences on humanitarian repercussions of nuclear weapons held in Norway, Mexico, Austria in 2013 and 2014 consecutively. My country paid great heed to those conferences and participated actively in them. The General Assembly, in the aforementioned resolution, declared that catastrophic repercussions of the use of nuclear weapons necessitate making all possible effort to realize disarmament. Mr. Chairperson, despite the aforementioned, the danger and threat of the nuclear weapons persists. And despite the fact that we almost approached the realization of the universality of the CTBT and the NPT, they both constitute a cornerstone in the international non-proliferation regime. I wish to seize this opportunity to call upon the 8 remaining Annex II states to swiftly ratify the CTBT in the briefest of delays to provide a new opportunity in order for us to together eliminate all threat and danger posed by nuclear testing. We call upon all countries to put an end to their nuclear testing, and specifically the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, that has violated Security Council resolutions and has posed an imminent threat on security and peace both at the regional and international levels. We equally draw your attention to the fact that terrorist groups may acquire such nuclear material to produce nuclear weapons. This constitutes one of the major, perhaps the most serious threat to international security, despite such nuclear security measures taken to make sure that such material does not fall into the hands of terrorists, nor into the hands of any unauthorized users. Nevertheless, what we are faced with in my country when it comes to countering terrorism on behalf of the entire world on our land indicates clearly that terrorist groups know no borders, nor do they abide by international systems and organizations. Therefore, we are left with one sole option, that is international cooperation, enhanced international cooperation, which necessitates collective effort within an international solid framework to make sure that nuclear equipment do not proliferate and do not fall into the hands of terrorists. Mr. Chairperson, I wish to reiterate our full support to international efforts to declare the universality of this treaty. We have taken part actively in a number of activities in support of the preparatory commission work. Equally, we hold the chair of a vice president to the two co-presidents, coordinators of the 10th conference, and Iraq is a candidate to the joint presidency of the 11th conference on facilitating the entry into force of the treaty. We wish to thank the Preparatory Commission for its effort paid and support made to member states through the provision of the International Data Center, through the International Monitoring System, which has allowed for a vigorous verification regime. Mr. Chairperson, a world free of nuclear arms and other weapons of mass destruction would be a safer one for us and for future generations. We need to strive to realize this objective through the declaration of the entry into force of this CTBT, a comprehensive treaty that bans all sorts of experiments, testing, and explosives, one that would fill the gap left by the 1963 treaty on the partial ban of nuclear testing. Thank you, sir.
I thank you, Deputy Foreign Minister, and now I would like to invite the Director of Department for Non-Proliferation and Arms Control in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation, Ambassador Mikhail Ulyanov. Thank you. You have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues, this year we are marking the CTBT's anniversary. Over the 20 years since it was open to signature, quite a bit has been accomplished. The treaty indeed has come close to universality. It was signed by 183 states, and 164 of them have actually ratified the treaty. These are impressive figures. For the overwhelming majority of states, including Russia, the CTBT has, in this fashion, become an integral element to ensure national and international security for all, but not for a majority, but not for all. Furthermore, we are noting that there's a global monitoring system of nuclear tests which is unprecedented in scale. It's been established, and this is nearing conclusion as scheduled, and at present almost no one is casting the verifiability, the soundness of the CTBT into question, and the effectiveness and reliability of the verification mechanism has been repeatedly confirmed in practice, including January this year when the DPRK conducted its fourth nuclear test. The integrated field exercise for OSI in 2014 held in Jordan also showed that as far as inspections are concerned, progress also is significant. Nonetheless, despite the anniversary, the mood here is not very jubilant at all. For 20 years, it's been open for signature, this treaty, and it's not yet entered into force. And prospects with respect to this are still uncertain. I wonder whether if we have a similar anniversary 20 years down the line, and we still won't have had a treaty entered into force. The states having opted for the treaty, like my country, for example, still cannot fully rely on this, and this is truly regrettable. At present, the fate of the CTBT is in the hands of 8 states from Annex 2 to the treaty, the ratification of which is indispensable for its entry into force. The political will of these states is determining whether the international community is going to be the witness of the creation of a new organization for CTBT and will actually implement the treaty, or whether the CTBT is going to actually be a fiasco. And here In this context, I'd like to quote what the president of the Russian Federation, Mr. Putin, said when he spoke last 11 April for the 20th anniversary of the CTBT. He said the unwillingness of some states to become full-fledged parties to this treaty is truly regrettable, especially since some of those states claim leadership and well-nigh special powers in resolving global security issues. We renew our call upon their leaders to demonstrate real political will and join the CTBT as soon as possible. And here I end my quote. We'd like to stress that the special role in this list of 8 states is certainly that played by the United States of America. It's precisely Washington that is capable of becoming the driving force behind the process of launching the treaty. We're sure that if they were to indeed join the treaty, other states certainly would join as well, because they are waiting for the U.S. to act first. And so, of course, everything hinges on a positive decision on the part of Washington. In spite of the fact that ever since the beginning of Mr. Obama's administration, for some 8 years back, we've been hearing about the intention to enter into force for the CTBT. But we don't see any practical movement in that direction. We really believe that Washington's position constitutes a serious obstacle to the CTBT's becoming an international legal instrument. By way of priority measures to be undertaken for earliest entry into force, we believe that the pursuit of individual collective efforts on the part of states advocating the treaty, the PTS, of the PrepCom, of the CTBT, of NGOs, is very important indeed. And I'd like to say that the PrepCon and its secretariat have certainly applied their efforts, and the executive secretary, Mr. Zerba, has certainly applied his efforts to this end as well. However, we really would like to have all the states remain attached to the spirit and the letter of CTBT pending this entry into force. It's very important to ensure an effective moratorium on nuclear testing. Of course, we should bear in mind that a voluntary moratorium on nuclear testing, and with all its significance, nonetheless cannot be esteemed as being a replacement to the entry into force of CTBT. Now, I'd like to briefly react to what the Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs said this morning. He basically addressed topics which are not relevant to the topic at hand. And Ukrainian colleagues don't seem to understand that the international community's agenda is not just boiling down to Russian-Ukrainian relations, which unfortunately remain problematic. I believe that we could have a response to the allegations in address of Russia, but we will be refraining in responding in this fashion. Attempts to politicize the discourse here on CTBT by introducing points unrelated to the subject at hand are counterproductive and harmful. And now some words about what Russia is doing about CTBT. We ratified the CTBT in 2000 already, and we believe that it's important, a priority, to implement this. On the 19th of April in Moscow, a seminar was held in support of the treaty with the presence of Mr. Zerbo, the Executive Secretary of CTBT. And in April, the Russian-American media published a joint article written by the Deputy Foreign Minister of Russia and Mr. Zerbo about the 20th anniversary of CTBT. And we are very closely cooperating also with the PrepCom in creating the Russian segment of IMS. The second highest number of stations are to be found in our country. To date in Russia, 27 stations have been certified out of 32, and we intend to conclude our work in this regard by the end of 2017. So, since the opening of the CTBT to signature, the world has been awaiting an entry into force. But alas, we've been waiting for 20 years now. And we really have to do our utmost to make this year of anniversary prompt us all to change for the better in this regard. I certainly hope that today's meeting will also serve in that connection. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Director. And I now would like to call upon State Secretary for Political Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Integration of Montenegro, His Excellency Mr. Igor Jovovic. You have the floor.
Distinguished chairpersons, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, under the immediate impression what has happened just before we have started our conference, I would like to express Montenegrin deepest condolences to the families of innocent victims of the horrendous terrorist act in Orlando, Florida, and to extend our feelings and thoughts of solidarity toward American people. The 20th anniversary of the opening for signature of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty is a right opportunity for a just few brief reflections from my own side. There is no doubt that it is one of the most far-fetching or far-reaching achievements in international efforts to significantly rise the level of global security and to enhance common understanding and cooperation. Even to a great extent, unity in this particular case over key issues concerning well-being of whole humanity. Although treaty is for so many years still provisional, it has helped a lot to develop sophisticated and quite efficient monitoring system, and even more, to practically stop nuclear tests all over the world, contributing greatly to the decrease or even to the diminishing of the risks of additional nuclear armament and nuclear wars, except in case of only one country, which irresponsibility is not only unacceptable, but also deplorable and even pitiful. Added value to CTBTO, or better to say, its international monitoring system and its own data center, is that it is providing accurate information related to the prevention of civil disasters, particularly tsunamis, earthquake, and nuclear armaments. We all know that the treaty has come near the universal adherence. Nevertheless, without the lasting and legally binding effect of entering into the force of the treaty, peace and security are continuing to be in danger, particularly in the current period of increasing and almost unprecedented new threats to the world, such as terrorism and extremism. That's why it is needed to reconfirm our commitments and to revigorate activities vis-à-vis implementation of the treaty, as well as to complete ratification of this treaty by 8 remaining countries listed in its Annex II. Montenegro is using this occasion to commend all the previous CTBTO achievements and the dedicated leadership of the current Executive Secretary, Dr. Lassina Zerbo. We were very pleased by his recent visit to Montenegro, which was an opportunity for us to raise public awareness, particularly among young generation, over the prohibition of nuclear testing and potential and real dangers of the nuclear armaments. Not at the end, I would like to reiterate that Montenegro stands ready to further contribute to joint activities in order to address the threats of the nuclear weapons and its misuse, and to make the world a safer place for current and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, State Secretary. And now let me call upon Director General for Political Affairs and International Security of Algeria, His Excellency Mr. Rachid Beladan. You have the floor, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to start my statement by joining previous speakers to state that our thoughts are with the victims of terrorist barbaric acts, leaving a number of regions of the world grieving, the latest of which was horrific in Orlando in the United States. An attack Algeria firmly condemned through the words of our president. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Lazar Comunescu, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, chairing this meeting. I would also like to congratulate the Executive Secretary on behalf of my delegation, Dr. Lassina Zerbo, together with the staff of the PTS for the excellent preparatory work done for this meeting, marking the 20th anniversary of opening for signature of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. The drafting of which was triumphant for multilateral diplomacy and proof of effectiveness in the area of security and disarmament through negotiations. I'd also like to take this opportunity to assure you of support of the Algerian delegation endorsing the statements made by the African group already given and the Arab group coming up. Mr. Chairman, this celebration is a symbol of fervent attachment of the international community to the entry into force of the CTBT, which is an important step in the process of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, as well as a key element for the promotion of international peace and security. It is also an opportunity bringing us all together to intensify our efforts to see entry into force of this treaty, which is an established priority set by the international community, reaffirmed at the NPT Review Conference in 2000 that Algeria had the privilege and honor to chair successfully. Relevance and importance of this instrument is constantly confirmed as an international norm for responsible conduct of states in nuclear affairs, and in particular through the 164 ratifications out of the 183 states signatory, thus representing a majority of the states of the international community, responding in favor of definitive elimination of this lethal weapon. And accordingly, we welcome the latest ratification recorded, and that is the Republic of Angola, just joining in to back universality of this treaty, testifying to the particular interest attached by Africa to disarmament and non-proliferation, and in particular the CTBT. Thus, my country would like to speak for strengthening of technical cooperation between the Preparatory Commission of the organization and African countries, so as to allow them to contribute to and benefit from the verification regime. Algeria calls upon countries that have not yet ratified the treaty, and in particular Annex II countries that have been referred to by almost every single previous speaker, Annex II countries to take that step as soon as possible to make entry into force reality and to thus achieve the goal set 20 years ago. Mr. Chairman, we congratulate the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO for the progress in implementing the three main components of our organization. that is the International Monitoring System, the International Data Center, and on-site inspection. With 282 certified facilities out of the 337 provided for under the treaty, in other words, an achievement rate approaching 84%, the IMS has proven itself a precious tool in prevention and management of natural or accidental disasters, as we've seen through substantial contributions to warnings for tsunamis and exceptional measures taken for collection and processing of data through IMS stations following the nuclear accident at Fukushima in 2011. We encourage the Executive Secretary to continue with promotion of technical cooperation with signatories, and in particular developing countries, with a view to seeing capacity building in the exchange and use of data. Quite clearly, entry into force of the treaty is not just progress towards international peace and security, it is also and especially value added in many scientific areas. Convinced that the use of treaty technologies may contribute to other strategic aims without in any way standing in the way of its main mission of verification, Algeria advocates for better coordination as well as more efforts to accelerate the process of ratification of the CTBT and implementation of its verification regime. Mr. Chairman, Algeria continues to endure human and environmental consequences of nuclear tests carried out in our territory. We are convinced that full elimination of nuclear weapons is the sole guarantee to address the danger of such weapons and their effects on humanity. With this conviction, together with other countries, we participate in the humanitarian initiative of Austria. At regional level, ratification of the Pelindaba Treaty demonstrates firm commitment of our country for disarmament and non-proliferation. And we are very attached to the implementation of a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East in accordance with the relevant Security Council and General Assembly resolutions, as well as the decision of the 1995 NPT Review Conference, a zone which is still awaiting the will of states and co-sponsors for full implementation. Today, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the opening of the CTBT for signature. It's an opportunity to renew our commitment and our support to all initiatives that can make the existence of this treaty fully effective. To conclude, I believe that it's imperative and necessary to stress that ratification of the CTBT is especially dependent on political will, and it is of utmost importance for us to continue with our efforts to achieve universality of this treaty. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for his statement, and now I would like to pass the floor to the distinguished representative of Slovenia, Ms. Stanja Steglec, Director General for Multilateral Affairs, Development Cooperation and International Law, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Slovenia. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by saying that I fully subscribe to the statement delivered on behalf of the European Union by the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. I would like to contribute to this important discussion by making some additional points on behalf of the Government of the Republic of Slovenia. Let me also join others in expressing our condemnation of the terrorist act in Orlando and our solidarity with the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty set up an important international standard: no more atomic bomb explosions. 20 years after its adoption in the United Nations General Assembly, we can say that nuclear tests are now regarded as an anomaly and an aberration, carried out against the globally accepted norms of behavior. This positive development can be entirely attributed to the treaty, which represents one of the biggest achievements in the efforts to maintain international peace and stability. Slovenia therefore highly appreciates the work of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization in Vienna. Although still provisional, it is an organization with a truly global presence and unique capabilities. Not only can it monitor the planet for signs of nuclear tests, but it is also able to put its worldwide network to other important uses. Among these are warnings on natural disasters, such as earthquakes and tsunamis, as well as monitoring of accidents such as the one in Fukushima. I would also like to use this opportunity to thank Dr. Lasina Zerbo, the Executive Secretary of the Preparatory Commission for the CTBTO, as well as the Provisional Technical Secretariat for their hard work and commitment. The expertise needed for the maintenance and continued development of the international monitoring system is impressive. This is also one of the reasons why we believe it is important to have the treaty enter into force as soon as possible, as it would also benefit the work of the organization. Let me therefore call upon all states, particularly the remaining 8 from Annex II, to sign and ratify the treaty without delay and preconditions. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to return to the issue of nuclear tests. Slovenia is highly concerned that the DPRK still conducts them. In our view, this represents a grave violation of its international obligations, especially in light of several United Nations Security Council resolutions. Such behavior poses a serious threat to peace and security on the Korean Peninsula, as well as in Northeast Asia and beyond. Slovenia therefore calls on the DPRK to refrain from additional provocative and dangerous acts and to re-engage with the international community in a credible and meaningful manner, especially in the framework of the six-party talks. We also urge the DPRK to accede to the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Ladies and gentlemen, before concluding, I would like to emphasize that for Slovenia, the threat of nuclear weapons proliferation remains at the forefront of our concerns. I would like to recognize and stress the important role that the CTBT plays in preventing not only horizontal, but also vertical proliferation. This is an aspect of the treaty that is sometimes overlooked, although it can play a very important role in the process of worldwide nuclear disarmament. Finally, let me say that Slovenia demonstrated its full commitment to the letter and spirit of the treaty, also by hosting the 12th annual NATO conference on weapons of mass destruction, arms control, disarmament and non-proliferation in Ljubljana at the beginning of May. Since the Executive Secretary was the keynote speaker at the event, the CTBT was one of the prominent topics discussed. We believe that the conference represented yet another step forward in our common non-proliferation endeavors and in our joint efforts to highlight the 20th anniversary of this important treaty. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for her statement, and now I would like to call upon the distinguished representative of Iran, Mr. Hamid Bandinjad, Director General for International Political and Security Affairs. You have the floor, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I would like to start my statement by expressing my delegation's deep sorrow over the terrorist activity perpetrated in Orlando, Florida, United States. We condemn firmly and principally such unacceptable acts against innocent peoples. I will join the previous speakers in congratulating you, Mr. Chairman, on your assumption as the chairperson of this important meeting. We would also like to thank the Executive Secretary, Mr. Lasino Zerbo, and his colleagues at the Provisional Technical Secretariat for organizing this meeting and assisting other partners in holding the side events. Mr. Chairman, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty has been a long aspiration of the international community and a viable reaction to the nuclear arms race at the initial phase of the nuclear age. The CTBT conclusion was therefore welcomed by the international community. At this juncture, at the 20th CTBT anniversary, we can be happy to generally assess that nuclear test explosions have been considerably reduced, and merit of this reduction can be attributed to the CTBT. Let's wish that CTBT puts an end to all nuclear explosive tests for all time. We, however, have and have had more expectation from this treaty to achieve. Many non-aligned countries, including my own, signed the treaty in New York with the hope that the CTBT would contribute to the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. We were hopeful that the conclusion of this treaty would prevent the qualitative as well as quantitative development of nuclear weapons. The CTBT in its preamble clearly stresses on the need for continued systematic and progressive efforts to reduce nuclear weapons globally with the goal of eliminating those weapons. Unfortunately, the nuclear weapon states have interpreted the treaty in a narrow manner and have perceived the treaty as an instrument to ban only explosive tests, and through this interpretation have continued to improve their nuclear arsenals through non-explosive nuclear testing. We believe this interpretation is clearly against the spirit of the treaty. We believe that nuclear weapon states should bear the main responsibility in entry into force of the CTBT by taking lead in the ratification of the treaty. In our view, if the objective of the treaty were to be fully realized, the continued commitment of all states signatories, especially the nuclear weapon states, to nuclear disarmament would be essential. We strongly call upon all nuclear weapon states to observe the spirit and letter of the CTBT. Furthermore, we call upon all parties who have not joined the NPT would join this treaty without delay. Mr. Chairman, Banning the development of nuclear weapons is vital in the region of the Middle East. It is of major concern that Israel continues to be the only party in the region which has not joined the NPT. In this vein, we all should support and assure the establishment of new zones in the regions when they do not exist, in particular in the Middle East, including through full and prompt implementation of the 1995 resolution and the 2010 NPT Plan of Action on the Middle East, and above all, convening as soon as possible of the conference on the establishment of such a zone in the Middle East. Mr. Chairman, my country was the first to express the concern that imposing to create an artificial regional grouping as the Middle East and South Asia in the context of the CTBT, in contravention with the tradition of the United Nations grouping, would lead to a negative polarization in the working environment before and after entry into force of the treaty. It is regrettable that this has proved right, and consequently this situation has prevented a large group of signatories to play a role within the CTBT discussions in Vienna through the group contribution. The last 20 years should have been sufficient to prove that this major deficiency should be rectified. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, while reiterating the commitment of my government to the objectives of the CTBT, once again we express our support to the objectives of the Provisional Technical Secretariat and the efforts of the Executive Secretary. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Iran for his statement, and next on the list is the distinguished representative of Croatia, Mr. Amir Mogherini, Assistant Minister, Director General for Multilateral and Global Affairs, Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs of Croatia. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Croatia is joining other colleagues in expressing condolences to government and people of the United States of America regarding the last terrorist attack. It is indeed a pleasure and honor to take the floor at this conference and speak briefly about the importance of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the opening for signature of this crucial document. Let me start by saying clearly that Croatia shares the view of many that the CTBT plays a pivotal role in reinforcing the global non-proliferation regime and sustaining the international effort towards global disarmament. The obvious key benefit of this treaty is the establishment of a highly efficient global nuclear explosion detection network. This verification regime is indispensable for international nuclear disarmament efforts because it delivers in a matter of moments precise data on any and all nuclear tests done around the globe. As a direct result of the presence of this treaty, nuclear explosive tests nowadays are basically non-existent. Exceptions has already been mentioned. However, much work still needs to be done. We are all aware of the preconditions needed for this treaty to enter into force. At the first glance, the numbers look great. 183 state signatories, 164 ratifications. This is an outstanding result by any standard. But the treaty will enter into force only when all of 44 Annex II states complete their ratification procedures. This year's 20th anniversary is a precious opportunity to invigorate our determination toward the end goal, entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. What we need in this moment is a political courage, sense of responsibility and leadership from those countries that have not yet signed or ratified the treaty. Efforts of the international community towards the full universalization of the CTBT have been substantial and consistent over the years. Croatia is a member of the European Union And as a group, we have demonstrated our commitment to the treaty through numerous activities and initiatives, both Union as a whole and within our national capacities. We had made it clear on every occasion and at many fora how our first political priority is support for universalization and entry into force of CTBT. We have supported the fulfillment of our aims with concrete financial contributions. And we will continue to do all of this because firm, continuous promotion of the objectives of treaty and its significance for the global nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation efforts is as essential as ever. There are many open issues in the realm of disarmament and non-proliferation. Some of them are in a deadlock for many years now. But nuclear test-free world, which we still did not reach, seems like the very minimum, perhaps a starting point for other advances. The CTBTO has organized many events already to commemorate this important anniversary. Today's ministerial meeting is perhaps one of the more prominent ones. Our hope is that today's discussions and the discussions which will take place at PrepCom tomorrow and the day after will be constructive and will add to the positive momentum we are sensing this year about CTBT. If the momentum is indeed building, if the CTBT is the next big thing in disarmament, we must all get on board now and do our part. Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.
I thank the representative of Croatia for his statement, and now I would like to call Her Excellency Ms. Annika Soder, the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sweden. You have the floor, Madam Vice Minister.
Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, let me first add my voice to those expressing condolences to the people of the United States, of Kazakhstan, of Turkey, and unfortunately many other countries affected by terrorist attacks. For today, let me also thank the government of Romania, Article 14 coordinators Kazakhstan and Japan, and not least Executive Secretary Lasina Cerbo for arranging this very timely meeting to celebrate 20 years since the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty opened for signature. We all know that CTBTO has since come a long way indeed. The Preparatory Commission and its Provisional Technical Secretariat have done a fantastic job building up the foundation for the CTBTO. A sophisticated system has been developed for monitoring compliance with the CTBT, whose data are now available to all state signatories to the treaty. And the international monitoring system has proven its worth, not least by providing reliable data on the condemnable nuclear tests conducted by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The effects on humans and nature of the over 2,000 nuclear tests carried out over the 50 years are very severe. Test sites remain uninhabitable to man and land, and pristine coral reefs have been destroyed. These effects serve as a stark reminder of the unacceptable and incalculable humanitarian and environmental consequences that would result if nuclear weapons were ever used again. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty gives us hope that such a horrible scenario will not occur. Mr. Chair, disarmament is a top priority for the Swedish government. Accordingly, we are highly preoccupied with the current stalemate in nuclear disarmament. Modernization and even expansion of nuclear arsenals take us further away from the goal that we share, the goal of a world free of nuclear weapons. Threats and attempts at intimidation by nuclear weapon states are particularly unhelpful. Solemn commitments made in the NPT are largely unrealized, creating frustration among non-nuclear weapon states and fueling calls for further action. We need to abide by norms, not least in times of turmoil. Sweden has been a very strong champion of the CTBT since the time that it was negotiated. Indeed, as mentioned by Her Excellency Federica Mogherini, our High Representative this morning, the entire European Union is united behind its entering into force. And that would constitute an important milestone towards the achievement of the total elimination of nuclear weapons. And it is a step to which all states parties to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty are committed. So, Sweden's support for the CTBT is both political and technical in nature. We were Article 14 coordinator from 2011 to 2013, focusing on wider adherence to the treaty in Southeast Asia. The ratification by Indonesia, Article 14 coordinator until September last year, as well as by Brunei Darussalam, was a very welcome development. We hosted the first substantive CTBT group of eminent persons in Stockholm in April 2014, and we are pleased to continue to support Dr. Hans Blick's participation in the GEM. Let me also mention that technology for noble gas detection developed by the Swedish Defence Research Agency is installed in many radionuclide monitoring stations around the world and provided the proverbial smoking gun at the recent field inspection exercise in Jordan. The government has tasked FOI with developing a third generation of the sauna system in support of the CTBT verification system. Can I also mention Dr. Ola Dahlman, a long-time chair of Working Group B. Swedish expertise played an important role in setting up the international monitoring system, and Sweden continues to develop analytical methods and training for CTBT technical experts from around the world. Last but not least, Sweden is a candidate for a seat on the Security Council from next year, 2017 to 2018. Where we will be in a position to contribute further to promoting the norm against nuclear testing and the entry into force of the CTBT, also looking at the permanent members and their particular responsibility. Mr. Chairperson, let me end by quoting my Foreign Minister, Margot Wallström, and her statement at the 2015 Article 14 conference. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty gives us hope that our shared vision of a more humane world where nuclear testing remains a thing of the past may come to fruition. Today, we renew our call on all states that have not yet done so, in particular the 8 remaining Annex II countries, to join us in realizing that vision. End of quote. And I now challenge the 8 to take bold steps forward, individually or jointly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Sweden for her statement, and now I would like to pass the floor to the distinguished representative of Australia, Mr. Richard Sadler, the First Assistant Secretary, International Security Division, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. We convey our deepest sympathies and condolences to the victims of the shocking act of hate and terror in Orlando, Florida, and express our solidarity with the people of the United States of America. On behalf of the Australian Government, I am pleased to take part in the 46th session of the Preparatory Commission for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organisation. Australia was a leading supporter of a legally binding nuclear test ban regime long before negotiations for the CTBT began in 1994. We introduced the CTBT to the UN General Assembly in 1996 and have been strong proponents of it ever since. For more than a decade, Australia, Mexico and New Zealand have alternated as lead sponsor of the UN General Assembly resolution on the CTBT. Last year we secured over 100 sponsors and co-sponsors and look forward to working closely with New Zealand, who will lead on this year's resolution. This preparatory commission is particularly special as we mark the 20th anniversary of the treaty's opening for signature. This year is an opportunity to promote the work we do to galvanise support for the work that still remains to be done. With 183 signatories and 164 ratifying states, our work over the past 20 years has resulted in the treaty being widely recognised as a critical component of the global nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament architecture. The nuclear test moratorium generated over these 20 years has become a clear and powerful international norm. The CTBT constrains the development of nuclear weapons and their qualitative improvement, which combats both horizontal and vertical nuclear proliferation. However, without the lasting and legally binding effect of entry into force of the treaty, this norm could be undermined. In fact, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is the only exception to the global moratorium against nuclear testing this century, challenging the international norm and the treaty's intent. Australia strongly condemns the nuclear tests of the DPRK of 2006, 2009, 2013 and 2016, and urges the DPRK to comply with all relevant Security Council resolutions and to abandon its nuclear weapons program in a complete, verifiable and irreversible manner. Australia urges all states that have not done so to sign and ratify the CTBT, in particular the remaining 8 Annex II states. These states need to sign and ratify without delay in order to advance the mutually reinforcing goals of nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. Pending its entry into force, Australia urges all states to refrain from any action that would defeat the object and purpose of the CTBT or undermine the global moratorium on testing it has underwritten. This year, as we are also celebrating the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the Preparatory Commission for the CTBTO, which was mandated by a resolution adopted on 19 November 1996. We welcome advances made by the CTBTO in building the treaty's verification regime and demonstrating its strength. It is pleasing that the credibility of the verification regime continues to be reaffirmed in the scientific community, including in states that have yet to ratify the treaty. Australia is encouraged by the fact that the CTBT International Monitoring System and the International Data Centre have so ably demonstrated their utility in providing accurate real-time data relating to major earthquakes, tsunamis and nuclear accidents, as well as other scientific benefits for all state signatories. We reiterate the importance of capacity building relating to national data centres, which equip states to analyse verification data, as well as for the CTBTO to advance its capacity to conduct on-site inspections. We look forward to the early completion of the IMS and other elements of the verification regime with the active support of all states. Australia continues to provide strong support to the CTBTO through our hosting of the third largest number of facilities in the IMS, 20 monitoring stations and a radionuclide laboratory, and through our expert contribution in the field of on-site inspection. Australia is honoured to co-chair with Japan the 8-country Friends of the CTBT, which meets biannually to maintain high-level advocacy, alternating with the Article 14 conference. Australia is also a proud member of the 12-country Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative and chair of the Vienna Group of 10, through all of which we advocate CTBT entry into force. In conclusion, the earliest possible entry into force of the CTBT is a non-proliferation and disarmament priority which Australia will continue to pursue. We must redouble our efforts to convince and, if necessary, assist all countries which have not yet done so to sign and ratify the treaty. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Australia for his statement, and now I would like to call His Excellency Mr. Tone Skogen, State Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Norway, to take the floor. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you. Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished participants. Thank you very much for inviting all of us to Vienna on this important occasion. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty is a centerpiece of the global arms control and non-proliferation regime, and it is befitting that we gather to celebrate its 20th anniversary. Still, we do so with mixed feelings. On the one hand, the treaty is a success, with its more than 160 state parties. On the other hand, this anniversary is a reminder of a sad paradox. Despite its success, the treaty is still unable to enter into force. The DPRK nuclear test earlier this year has shown us once again that the ban on nuclear weapons testing is as important and relevant as ever. The instant detection of this test demonstrated that the international monitoring system under the treaty works properly. The universal outrage that followed the test showed just how strong the norm against nuclear testing is. Skeptics sometimes ask whether the ratification and the entry into force of the CTBT really matters. Hasn't the global monitoring system already proved its worth? Don't we now have a universal norm against nuclear testing? To this, I would say that a norm or a self-imposed testing moratorium can never be a substitute for a comprehensive, universally binding legal agreement. There is broad international consensus that the Test Ban Treaty is a cornerstone of the global arms control architecture. Yet, its entry into force is already 20 years overdue. This indefinite interim period threatens to dismantle the post-Cold War non-proliferation framework. It threatens to erode the norm against nuclear testing. The 8 states that need to ratify the treaty for it to enter into force have a special responsibility. Norway urges these states to ratify without delay. At the same time, we have to be realistic. We cannot wait forever for accession by the remaining Annex II states. We should start looking into ways to make the CTBT fully legally binding, irrespective of the progress made with the remaining ratifications. I would like to commend Dr. Serbo and the Provisional Technical Secretariat for their dedicated work in preparing for the implementation of the treaty and for their tireless advocacy. Norway remains a staunch supporter of the treaty. We have completed our part of the international monitoring system and have a total of 6 monitoring stations on Norwegian territory. Norway has also contributed financially to CTBT capacity building, including training courses for developing countries. We pay tribute to the important role played by civil society and the scientific community. We also welcome the new Youth Forum. Once again, I congratulate the CTBTO on its anniversary, and I hope that we will soon gather here again to celebrate its entry into force. Thank you.
I thank the State Secretary of Norway for his statement, and now I would like to call upon the distinguished representative of Serbia, Ambassador Branimir Filipovic, Acting Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs for Security Policy. You have the floor, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to join other delegation in expressing our sincere condolences to our American colleagues in the wake of yesterday's appalling massacre and loss of lives of innocent people in Orlando. Mr. Chairman, while Serbia fully aligns itself with the EU statement, I would like to make a few brief remarks in my national capacity. At the beginning, allow me to extend my profound appreciation to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, Lazar Comanescu, and Executive Secretary, Dr. Zerbo, for convening this high-level meeting devoted to the marking of the 20th anniversary since the opening for signature of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. We see this meeting as a unique opportunity to raise awareness on such an important issue as is the prohibition of nuclear tests and to enhance political action to promote prompt ratification of the treaty by annexed second states, which would turn to the CTBT into an acting international legal instrument. By convening this meeting and through active participation of many high-level officials, we all reaffirm the vital importance and urgency of the entry into the force of this treaty. Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty is a fundamental international instrument of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, which could play an even more significant role in the future. Unfortunately, CTBT still hasn't entered into force, and the Republic of Serbia, as a country which ratified the treaty in 2004, is aligning itself with other states that are strongly supportive of the activities that will create conditions for its full and effective implementation in the nearest future. Mr. Chairman, as a responsible member of the international community, Republic of Serbia remains committed to the principles of full and consistent fulfillment of CTBT obligations and further strengthening of the CTBT regime, especially the implementation of the treaty verification regime, which is an effective deterrent to any type of development of nuclear weapons and its proliferation. We also value the contribution of the Article 14 process and its coordinator, Japan and Kazakhstan, in promoting its entry into the force. In conclusion, we call upon all countries that have not yet signed or ratified the CTBT to do it. And I sincerely hope that during the next anniversary or earlier, we will be in a position to see this treaty as an acting international legal instrument. Thank you very much for your attention.
I thank the representative of Serbia for his statement, and now the floor will be passed to the distinguished representative of Afghanistan, Mr. Najibullah Al-Kil, Director General, Border Affairs and Security Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to speak on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan in this important high-level meeting today, marking the 20th anniversary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. At the outset, I would like to associate with the previous speakers in expressing our deep sympathy and condolences on the recent deadly attack in Florida to the people of the United States, as well as to the families of the victims. Mr. Chairman, as a party to the CTBT, Afghanistan is committed to this important treaty as a core international instrument on nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. Today, the significance of this treaty is evidenced more than ever, as it represents the desire of people across the globe for a world free of nuclear weapons, which can be exemplified by continuous governmental and non-governmental efforts towards the entry into force of the treaty. We welcome the new signatories of the CTBT, further adding to the relevance of the treaty as one of the most adhered to instruments in this area. While welcoming the voluntary moratorium of nuclear tests by some countries, we wish to stress the importance of universal adherence to the treaty and its entry into force as a necessary step towards international peace and security. Mr. Chairman, we commend the efforts that have been made in continuously advancing the treaty verification regime and doing it with global reach. We also appreciate the civil and scientific activities under the CTBT in providing accurate data related to the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear accidents, as well as other civil and scientific application to all state parties. We would like to further stress the importance of capacity building opportunities for national data centers and other aspects of civil and scientific applications. In conclusion, let me re-emphasize our interest to fully participate in the CTBT's activities, and we look forward to further benefit from the capacity building programs offered by the organization. I thank you for your kind attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of Afghanistan for his statement. Now I would like to invite His Excellency Mr. Ramon Quiñones, the permanent representative of Dominican Republic, who will speak on behalf of the GRULAC. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, on behalf of the group of countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, GRULAC, we'd like to express our heartfelt condolences to the government and people of the United States because of the terrible events this weekend in their country. We extend our condolences also to the families of the victims. Our region has always promoted full support to the regime for disarmament and non-proliferation. Latin America and the Caribbean established the first densely populated nuclear weapon-free zone through the Treaty of Tlatelolco during the 60s. And more recently, in 2014, countries in our region undertook the commitment through consolidation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a peace zone, where there's a declaration for an obligation of countries in the region to continue promoting nuclear disarmament as a priority objective, contributing to general disarmament and strengthening of confidence building among nations. Support of our region to the CTBT is unquestionable, as was confirmed in the special declaration on the 20 years of opening to signature of the CTBT adopted by the heads of state of CELAC at the last summit in Quito last January. Mr. Chairman, with the 20th anniversary since the opening of the CTBT for signature, GRULAC would like to stress the central role of the treaty in the regime of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, and the vital importance and urgency of entry into force of the CTBT. Accordingly, we call upon the remaining 8 countries in Annex 2 of the treaty whose ratification is necessary for entry into force of the CTBT to subscribe to it or ratify it as soon as possible, urging these countries to adopt initiatives to make progress with ratification. We reiterate our rejection of all types of nuclear weapon tests and all strategic concepts justifying the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons, or the promotion and establishment of military and political alliances based on nuclear weapons and nuclear deterrence policies. We further reiterate that cessation of all test explosions of nuclear weapons and all other nuclear explosions by restricting the development and qualitative improvement of nuclear weapons and ending the manufacture of advanced new types of nuclear weapons constitutes an effective measure of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation in all its aspects. We insist that all states should refrain from carrying out nuclear tests, other nuclear explosions, or any other relevant non-explosive testing, including subcritical experiments and those conducted through simulation, aiming to develop and improve nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction. Such actions are contrary to the object and purpose of the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime, to the obligations and provisions contained in the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, and against the spirit and letter of the CTBT, thereby undermining its impact as a measure of nuclear disarmament. Pending the entry into force of the treaty, GRULAC countries urge to maintain all current moratoriums on test explosions of nuclear weapons, and at the same time reiterate that these measures do not have the same permanent and legal binding effect that could be achieved with the entry into force of the CTBT to put an end to all nuclear weapons tests and any other type of nuclear test or relevant non-explosive tests. Mr. Chairman, we also reaffirm the commitment of the countries of the region to continue providing to the Preparatory Commission political and material support needed to analyze in the most efficient and economical way all its tasks, including to further develop all elements of the verification regime. We are pleased that, in addition to the provisions of its mandate, the International Monitoring System and the International Data Center of the CTBT have proved useful to produce tangible civilian and scientific benefits, bearing in mind the objective of the treaty as a vital instrument of the regime of non-proliferation and nuclear disarmament. GRULAC countries commit to continue working for the early entry into force of the CTBT and urge all states to remain seized of this issue at the highest political level. Thank you very much.
I thank the Ambassador of Dominican Republic, Mr. Quiñones, for his statement on behalf of GRULAC, and now I would like to call upon the next speaker, His Excellencies Mr. Ali El Mohamdi, Permanent Representative of Morocco, who will speak on behalf of the Arab Group. You have the floor, Ambassador.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, at the outset, I would like, on behalf of the Arab Group, to express to the government and people of the United States of America our condolences and our expressions of support as a consequence of the terrible attack on Sunday. Mr. Chairman, we would like to express our appreciation and gratitude to Mr. Lazar Comanescu, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, for chairing the opening session of this session of the Preparatory Commission of the CTBTO, which coincides with the 20th anniversary of opening the treaty for signature, which makes this session of the PrEP Commission even more significant and calls for finding further means to achieve the objectives of nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament as expressed in the treaty. The Arab Group also expresses its appreciation to Mr. Lassina Zerbo, to Dr. Lassina Zerbo, the Executive Secretary of the PrEPCOM, for the opening statement and for the reports prepared for this session. Mr. Chairman, the Arab Group realizes the great importance of the CTBT within the international regime of non-proliferation and disarmament, and the Arab Group has worked assiduously throughout the years 1993 to 1996, which witnessed the negotiation of the text of the treaty in order to bring this treaty to fruition and to mobilize international support for it. One of the better examples of those efforts was the support of the Arab Group for adding the CTBT to the indefinite extension deal of the NPT in 1995, and which also included negotiating the Fissile Material Treaty and the establishment of a nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction free zone in the Middle East. The Arab states also participate effectively in the various efforts aimed at supporting the Preparatory Commission of the CTBTO. Today, on the 20th anniversary of opening for signature this treaty, the Arab states are participating at very high levels in the session. In addition to the participation of His Excellency, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Sudan, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan has also supported the efforts of building the verification regime of this treaty by hosting the integrated field exercise, the largest one in the history of the organization, in the OSI facility at the Dead Sea in November and December 2014. The Arab states also participate effectively in all organizations that aim at facilitating the entry into force of the treaty, and we have hosted the Executive Secretary of the PrEPCOM on various occasions in order to determine methods to cooperate with the organization. Based on that, the Arab Group calls for the entry into force of the treaty as soon as possible, and we mention specifically the need for Israel to ratify the CTBT while keeping in mind that Israeli joining the treaty is not an alternative or does not substitute its joining the NPT as a non-nuclear state and subjecting all its nuclear facilities to the comprehensive safeguards regime. In the same context, we re-emphasize the importance of achieving a tangible progress in establishing a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East and our rejection for any reduction or shrinking of the objectives of the CTBT. Mr. Chairman, the Arab Group re-emphasizes the importance of banning all forms of nuclear testing. This is one of the most important steps in order to achieve global disarmament and the establishment of a nuclear weapon-free world, which is a fundamental obligation and commitment by the international community within Article 6 of the NPT. Accordingly, the Arab Group expressed their deep concern for the continuation of nuclear tests in contravention and violation of relevant Security Council resolutions and in a way that undermines international peace and security. Mr. Chairman, the Arab Group expressed their appreciation for the efforts throughout the past years in building a verification system for the treaty, and we commend the achievements of this regime in the stage of provisional testing and operations pending the entry into force of the treaty. This reflects the possibility of using this regime in civil applications that increase the capabilities of signatory states in predicting natural disasters, monitoring them based on specific assignments from the PrEPCOM. Therefore, our group emphasized the importance of capacity building for all member states and the technologies of the verification regime so that all states can deal with the verification regime on an equal footing. Mr. Chairman, the Arab Group on this 20th anniversary of opening for signature the treaty appeals to the international community to try to preserve the objectives of the treaty and to implement them and not remain satisfied with the benefits that have been achieved in the verification regime. And in conclusion, we express our keen support for the efforts of the chairman in achieving the success of this current session of the Commission. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the Distinguished Representative of Morocco for his statement on behalf of our group. And the next speaker on my list is the Distinguished Representative of France, Her Excellency Mr. Marion Paradas, the Permanent Representative. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chair, I'd like to start off by presenting my condolences to the families of the victims in Orlando. I would like to express our solidarity with the Americans, and in face of such an outrage, I would like to side with the United States, our friends. And I would like to support what Mrs. Nugarhed has said. I would like to thank Romania for the chairmanship of the working groups to organize the 20th anniversary of the treaty, and I'd like to congratulate Mr. Lassina Zerbo, Executive Secretary for the PrEPCOM of the CTBT. I indeed believe that you and your team have done ever so much to strengthen the PTS and its mandate since you started your working. 20 years ago, the CTBT, after several months of Geneva negotiations, was deposited and opened for the signature of all states. France actively participated in these negotiations in the greatest of transparency and with great political will, reaffirming the responsibilities and objectives which were its own. And 20 years ago, the international community accepted this treaty as a major step forward towards nuclear disarmament, a complete ban, total, without any exception of the testing explosions for nuclear weapons and any other nuclear explosion. And here we're gathered to take stock of this organization's work and to see its prospects. The attachment of France to CTBT is well known, and it's regularly recalled at the highest level. The President of the French Republic, when he spoke in Istres in February 2015, made the CTBT entry into force the highest priority for France when it comes to nuclear disarmament. And the international monitoring system, installed to the tune of more than 85% to date, has demonstrated its effectiveness and relevance. This was confirmed last January when the North Koreans conducted their fourth nuclear test, and this was firmly condemned by the entire international community. And it's also useful during natural disasters like the Chile's earthquake in September 2015, the Japan Fukushima tsunami in March 2011. France has contributed to the work on the CTBT, which is largely positive. We count amongst the first states to have signed in September '96. And as a responsible nuclear power, we've taken strong and exemplary commitments. We've dismantled in '98 our experimental site for nuclear testing in the Pacific, definitively, transparently, and open to the international community. We have significantly reduced our nuclear arsenal. We have dismantled our ground-ground component, and we've finally stopped the production of plutonium and uranium for nuclear weapons. And these commitments have been taken and honored ever since the very beginning of the treaty. Today, the Directorate for Military Applications of the Commissariat of Atomic Energy has contributed significantly to the international monitoring system. The CEA is our national data center, and it's also the operator for 16 stations on French territory, 8 stations abroad, and 16 radionuclear certified stations for CTBT. We, in the Commissariat, are developing our expertise in the 4 monitoring technologies, including radionuclide detection. The stock that we've taken is there. It's quantifiable and verifiable. New resources have been mobilized. The GEM, group of eminent persons, have been mobilized, and young people as well. But the challenges are ever so many. The French diplomatic tools remain mobilized in favor of nuclear disarmament stage by stage. The first stage is the entry into force of the CTBT, and the second stage is the banning on the production of fissile material for nuclear weapons and other nuclear explosives. It is necessary, indeed, to preserve the key of the last 20 years, a high level of development of capacity within the CTBT, and France recognizes this technical maturity, certainly. It's necessary to encourage all the states not yet having done so to sign and ratify the treaty. Our objective today is simple: earliest entry into force. 183 states out of a total of 196 have signed the CTBT. Universalization is at hand. We must pursue our efforts. 36 of the 44 states of which the ratification is necessary for EIF of the CTBT have ratified, and the responsibility of states in Annex II that haven't yet done so is to respond to the expectations of the international community and to sign and ratify the treaty to enable that EIF. France continues to call upon each of these states and remind them of the relevance, the need, the urgency for that signature or ratification, because it's up to each of these countries to take its responsibilities in hand and indeed to espouse test a ban in favor of peace and security. Thank you very much.
I thank the permanent representative of France for her statement, and I call upon the distinguished representative of Italy, His Excellency Mr. Filippo Formica, the permanent representative. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Microphone, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like first of all to join previous speakers in expressing my condolences to the family of the victims of the Orlando attack and to the American people. Mr. Chairman, let me thank you, as well as the Executive Secretary, Lassina Zerbo, and his team for organizing this meeting. I align myself to the statement made by the High Representative Mogherini on behalf of the European Union. I very much agree with the point made by UN Secretary General Mr. Ban Ki-moon just a few weeks ago here, that this 20th anniversary of the CTBTO is not a celebration but a reminder of work remaining. It is a call to action. It is also an occasion to look back at 20 years of work of the Preparatory Commission and the Provisional Technical Secretariat. In fact, much has been achieved in these 20 years of provisional operation. The verification system is 90% complete. Nuclear experiments have been conducted by only one state in the 21st century. There is a wide consciousness that nuclear explosions have a devastating effect on people and environment. Throughout, Italy has contributed to promoting the treaty and the organization. We have ratified the treaty in 1998. The auxiliary seismic station in Sicily is certified and operates regularly, as does Italy's national data center. Italy is among the top contributors to the organizations, and last but not least, I'd like to mention the recent offer by Italy of a prototype cooperating national facility. There is a wide agreement in considering the entry into force of the CTBT as the first concrete measures to adopt on the way to realizing the goal of a safer world for all and without nuclear weapons. The first of the 13 practical steps of the 2000 NPT Review Conference is about the CTBT, and it recognizes the importance and urgency to achieve the early entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. The 28 five-point action plan of the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon stresses the CTBT. In particular, it recognizes that we need new efforts to bring the CTBT into force. Lately, the 2015 NPT Review Conference has registered a strong consensus on the CTBT and the need of its entry into force and its universalization. So, there is a widespread agreement on this. However, some argue that the present moment, characterized by multiple security challenges, is not appropriate for promoting the entry into force of the treaty. We do not agree. On the contrary, we believe that the existing security tensions provide a strong political argument for giving a new impulse to efforts for the early entry into force of the CTBT. A treaty in force would contribute to reducing security concerns and tensions, thereby creating a political environment more conducive to taking further concrete steps in advancing nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. It is high time to go back to fundamentals. CTBT entry into force remain the #1 priority. In this regard, the remaining annexed 2 states have a special responsibility. Today, on this solemn occasion, Italy renews the appeal to these states to sign and ratify the CTBT without delay and without condition to achieve the early entry into force of the treaty. The alternative could well be not the continuation of the status quo, but rather a sliding back towards the resumption of nuclear tests and new arms race. It is a scenario that we must avoid at all costs. What is needed is a renewed political determination that will put aside short-term considerations in favor of a higher view of our shared security and common human destiny. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Permanent Representative of Italy for his statement. And now I would like to invite the distinguished representative of Germany, Her Excellency Ms. Patricia Flohr, Federal Government Commissioner for Non-Proliferation and Disarmament, Director General for Non-Proliferation and Disarmament. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to join others in expressing our heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims and to the US people after the attack in Orlando yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to fully align myself with the statement by the High Representative read this morning on behalf of the European Union. Listening to all of you, one thing is clear. we all agree the time is more than ripe for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty to finally enter into force. Therefore, on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the opening for signature of the CTBT, I call with renewed emphasis on the remaining Annex II states to sign and/or ratify this treaty. An effective CTBT constitutes an essential pillar of the global disarmament and non-proliferation architecture. And of course, let me use this opportunity to thank Ambassador Istrate as well as Executive Secretary Zerbor for having worked tirelessly toward making the best possible use of this anniversary in order to promote entry into force and raise international awareness for the proven importance of the CTBT as an effective treaty with an effective organization. These shared objectives are also what brought us together here today. Signing and ratifying the CTBT should be an obvious step for all countries, and I give you some reasons. In addition to ensuring that no nuclear test on our globe goes undetected, the unique monitoring system produces some tremendous benefits also for civilian purposes, such as valuable data for research or tsunami warnings. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon observed, even before entering into force, the CTBT is saving lives. To sign and/or ratify the CTBT thus would send a strong signal to the international community and without doubt not only produce some goodwill worldwide, but also help to build mutual trust. Unequivocal commitment to the CTBT serves and is in itself an important confidence-building measure. It can help diffuse tensions in regions such as South or East Asia and the Middle East. It is especially in times of crises and conflicts that it is of paramount importance to be able to count on regulatory frameworks such as the CTBT. Furthermore, regionally coordinated ratification could be seen as a confidence-building measure for the specific region. But there is more. We are convinced that any country would benefit from engaging with the international monitoring system early on. Becoming an active partner in this global network of scientists, data exchange and research is bound to have a positive impact on that country's research landscape. We therefore invite you to jointly explore ways how to connect scientists and experts in CTBT countries with their counterparts in non-signatory or ratifying countries. Thus, we could create a forum for dialogue and the sharing of experience, demonstrating the benefits of engagement with the IMS. Germany is a proud member of the Friends of the CTBT, and we are the third largest contributor to the CTBTO budget. We are firmly convinced that an early entry into force of the CTBT would be a milestone on the path leading us toward a world without nuclear weapons. A world safer for all nations and all of humanity. Let us together reinforce the de facto global moratorium against nuclear testing. Let us together create the momentum to help the CTBT become legally binding at last. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of Germany for her statement, and I call upon distinguished representative of Pakistan, Her Excellency Ms. Ayeshari, as the permanent representative. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Thank you, Chairman. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to mark the 20th anniversary of the CTBT. At the same time, it is really important to reflect upon the reasons why the treaty has not yet entered into force. While doing so, it is important to look back to history. We had participated actively in the negotiations that led to the finalization of the CTBT in the Conference on Disarmament. We not only endorsed the treaty in the CD, but also voted in favor of the General Assembly resolution, which called for its adoption. We have been an accredited observer state of the Preparatory Commission of the CTBTO. We have also taken a positive note of the progress achieved so far. Mr. Chair, despite our being a non-signatory state, we have been supporting the objectives and purposes of the treaty by declaring and maintaining a voluntary moratorium on nuclear testing since 1998. In addition, we had declared that we would not be the first to resume nuclear testing in our region. Following the first nuclear test in 1974 in our neighborhood, we made several proposals for keeping South Asia free of nuclear weapons and missiles, including a proposal for a regional CTBT. None of these proposals met a favorable response. We have continuously stated our commitment to peace and stability in the region by proposing a strategic restraint regime, which includes measures for nuclear and missile restraint. This still remains on the table. Mr. Chair, during the 2007 Article 14 conference, we highlighted that ending all discriminatory nuclear practices in South Asia would also facilitate the objectives of the global non-proliferation regime, including the CTBT. Selective exemptions in deviation from non-proliferation standards and norms do not serve the objectives of non-proliferation and the universalization of the treaty. A golden opportunity was again wasted in 2008 to integrate CTBT as one of the non-proliferation benchmarks, while at the same time granting a country-specific exemption to the NSG guidelines. We are yet again witnessing a propensity for selective exemptions on the part of some on the issue of new NSG membership, instead of objective criteria were to be applied across the board. It is highly unfortunate to see commercial and strategic considerations overshadowing global non-proliferation values. Mr. Chair, in conclusion, I would like to state that the creation of a stable and a balanced security environment in sensitive regions like South Asia necessitates progress towards resolving outstanding disputes, a balance in conventional forces, and nuclear restraint. Moreover, a criteria-based, non-discriminatory approaches for mainstreaming and integrating the states which are outside the global non-proliferation instruments must be followed in a manner that it also strengthens with the global non-proliferation regime. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the distinguished representative of Pakistan, and before I give the floor to the next speaker, I would like to inform you that in this moment for tonight, the following delegations will be giving the floor. First, in this following order: Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative, Kuwait, Thailand, Portugal, Holy See, Singapore, Mongolia, and Brazil. The debate under the agenda item 7 will be continuing tomorrow at 10 o'clock at Boardroom C, 4th floor, Building C, at the VAC, of course, at 10 o'clock sharp, and the first speaker will be the distinguished representative of Turkey. Now I would like to call upon Her Excellency Ms. Patricia Floor, the Federal Government Commissioner for Non-Proliferation and Disarmament, who will speak on behalf of Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on the 20th anniversary of the opening for the signature of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, we, the members of the Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative, NPDI, a diverse cross-regional grouping of non-nuclear weapon states, and I name them Australia, Canada, Chile, Germany, Japan, Mexico, the Netherlands, Nigeria, the Philippines, Poland, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. All of us, we reaffirm our strong commitment to strengthening the nuclear test ban regime, including its early entry into force, as well as to advancing global nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. The CTBT has long been a goal of the international community as enshrined in the preamble of the NPT. For 20 years, the CTBT has underpinned the global norm against nuclear testing and developed a world-class verification system which allows real-time monitoring across the globe. The commitment of the international community to the objectives of the CTBT and its early entry into force is well established. In this context, we recall that only the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has conducted nuclear tests in this century. The widespread condemnations, including ours, in response to North Korea's fourth nuclear test on 6 January 2016, are testament to the normative strength of the treaty. The NPDI calls for each of the 8 remaining Annex II states to sign and/or ratify the CTBT without waiting for others to do so first, and thus contribute to building mutual trust. In order to support diffusing regional tensions, regionally coordinated ratification could also be considered. Entry into force of the CTBT is an achievable and essential step towards global disarmament that can and should take place without delay. Pending the entry into force, we call on all states to acknowledge and continue the global de facto moratorium on nuclear weapon test explosions and refrain from any action that would undermine the CTBT's object and purpose. On this occasion, we express our strong concern that the CTBT still has not entered into force after 20 years. We stress the importance of all countries which have not yet done so to sign and ratify the treaty without further delay. Although valuable, a voluntary moratorium on nuclear test explosions is, however, no substitute for a permanent and legally binding commitment to end nuclear testing and all other nuclear explosions. It can only be achieved by the entry into force of the CTBT. The NPDI fully supports the Article 14 process aimed at facilitating the early entry into force and is committed to the declarations issued at Article 14 conferences. We commend the accomplishments of the CTBTO, in particular its strong progress in establishing the international monitoring system and international data center at the core of the CTBT's verification regime. This system has proved its effectiveness by detecting North Korea's nuclear tests, as well as its value for civil and scientific uses by strengthening tsunami warnings and other disaster alerts internationally. Therefore, we encourage states that have not yet done so to complete the IMS stations in their territories as soon as possible, and furthermore encourage states that have not yet joined the CTBT to support the IMS. The NPDI reaffirms our commitment to support the completion of the verification regime and urges all state signatories to do likewise. International cooperation in readying all elements of the verification regime includes the establishment of all remaining IMS stations, the contribution and analysis of data by national data centers, establishment of an effective on-site inspection capability, and support for exercises that build awareness of and confidence in all aspects of the CTBT's verification regime. The NPDI sees nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation as mutually reinforcing processes. The CTBT advances both: a permanent and legally binding commitment to end nuclear weapons testing and all other nuclear explosions is in the overwhelming interests of all countries. In this context, The NPDI is ready to work with Article 14 co-coordinators in considering practical options expressed in their December 2015 action plan for firmly establishing the norm against nuclear testing in a manner consistent with international law. The NPDI is committed to realizing the early entry into force and will continue to work tirelessly to this end. Entry into force of the CTBT is an essential step, and we implore all countries to join us in this endeavor. I thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Patricia Flohr for the statement on behalf of Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative, and I call upon the distinguished representative of Kuwait, His Excellency Mr. Sadiq Marafi, the permanent representative, to take the floor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سيد الرئيس بداية
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Mr. Chairman, at the outset, we express our deep condolences to the government and people of the United States of America for the horrible crime that took place in Orlando, Florida. And here we recall what the state of Kuwait suffered last year during this blessed month, a terrorist attack that led to the death of 26 martyrs who lost their lives while they were praying on Friday. This proves that terrorism does not distinguish among nationalities, ethnicities, and religions. Mr. Chairman, we align ourselves with the statement of the Group of 77 and China and the statement of the Arab Group. The State of Kuwait attaches the utmost importance to all matters relating to nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. We underline our steady and firm position with respect to international security. Accordingly, the State of Kuwait joined the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty and hosts one of the international monetary stations out of our belief in the importance of ridding the world of the dangers of weapons of mass destruction. We provide all services to that station. This is also based on our belief in the significant role of the CTBT in that regard. The State of Kuwait signed the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty in 1996 and ratified it in 2003. We host the RN40 radionuclide station since 1994. This was one of the first stations in the region. It was started as an experimental station until it was formally certified in the International Monetary System in 2004. The station transmits and has been transmitting to the International Data Center since 2003. Mr. Chairman, this year began with the test carried out by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. In this regard, we would like to commend the efforts of the Provisional Technical Secretariat to follow up on that event, analyze all related data, and keep member states informed of the results in a timely manner. This proves the importance of this organization for the international community. In this context, we emphasize the importance of the entry into force and universality of the treaty and the importance of its regime, especially as we are today celebrating the 20th anniversary of the opening for signature of the treaty and the establishment of the Preparatory Commission. We therefore call upon all remaining states, particularly Annex II states, to achieve that goal by signing and or ratifying the treaty as soon as possible. Mr. Chairman, out of concern for the entry into force of the treaty and the continued effectiveness of the work of the organization, it is important to keep the discussions of the various policy-making organs of the organization in line and within the agreed-upon mandate of the framework of the treaty, and to keep in mind that the primary goal is the entry into force and building a verification system with balance among its three branches. Mr. Chairman, the world has recently agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals as well as a new approach to deal with climate change. Our presence here today is aimed at achieving perhaps an equally important global agreement. There is an innate relationship between security and development. Therefore, the achievement of the universalization of this treaty will promote the efforts that seek to achieve peace and prosperity for all humanity. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, we would like to thank the Executive Secretary of the PTS and all its staff for their continued efforts towards the success of the organization's work and their professionalism in technical matters. We also extend our thanks to all those who helped promote and celebrate the 20th anniversary and the coordinators of the Article 14 conference. We express our appreciation for the PTS for the technical support and its efforts in the fields of training and capacity building. We also reiterate the commitment and continued support by the State of Kuwait for the organization and our commitment to achieve security, peace, and progress for all our peoples. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative of Kuwait for the statement, and I call upon the distinguished representative of Thailand, His Excellency Mr. Arthur Srisamut, the permanent representative. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin my statement by expressing my country's deepest condolences to the United States for the incident in Orlando, Florida over the weekend. Our hearts and prayers go to those who have lost their loved ones in this tragic attack. Mr. Chairman, as many ministers and distinguished speakers before me have highlighted, this meeting is not an occasion to celebrate, but to commemorate and to renew our commitment to work together in order to achieve an early entry into force of the treaty. I fully concur with this statement. Without doubt, all delegations present here share the same objective. Thailand is no exception. We fully support the letter and spirit of the treaty. We have maintained our firm position in supporting a universal norm against all nuclear testing, as the international community has well witnessed the catastrophic humanitarian and other negative consequences of nuclear explosions. Thailand also believes that meaningful progress must be made on nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation in order to ensure that nuclear testing must not be carried out again. However, since the beginning of this year, Thailand has remained deeply concerned with the DPRK latest nuclear tests in January. This act continues to pose a serious threat to regional and international peace and security, and constitutes a clear violation of international law. We urge the DPRK to fully abide by all relevant UNSC resolutions, including the latest UNSC Resolution 2270 adopted on the 2nd of March 2016. Mr. Chairman, Thailand has recognized and continue to support the great work done by the PrepCom and the PTS in the promotion of universalization and entry into force of the treaty. Significant progress has been made in all three main pillars of the PTS work, namely the International Monitoring System, or IMS, the International Data Center, or IDC, and the On-Site Inspection, OSI. With regard to the IMS, Thailand is pleased to have hosted Primary Seismic Station, or PS41, in Chiang Mai, in northern Thailand, and anticipates the completion of the installation of Radionuclide Station, or RN65, in Nakhon Pathom, which is adjacent to Bangkok, within next year. We are committed to playing our part in supporting the international community in monitoring to detect nuclear testing. Thailand also wishes to commend the PTS public outreach efforts. Reaching out to the youth, media, academics, and civil society, among others, is crucial in raising public awareness about the importance of the treaty and garnering broad-based support for the entry into force. In addition, the PTS has done tremendous work in training officials and experts of state signatories, building the network of young professionals and scientists to work on CTBT-related issues, as well as promoting wider applications of CTBT-related technology. Thailand fully supports all these efforts, as they are important steps in generating a positive momentum with regard to CTBT and benefiting people from all over the world. We also wish to emphasize the significance of cooperation between the PTS and relevant regional and international organizations. Such cooperation should be further promoted in order to improve efficiency of each organization's operation and resource management, widen the common pool of expertise, and more importantly, to strengthen global efforts in addressing nuclear-related issues. Mr. Chairman, before closing, I wish to take this opportunity to inform the meeting that our National Legislative Assembly has recently approved the draft Domestic Nuclear Energy Act. The passage of this act puts us on the right path towards ratifying the treaty in due course. Once again, Thailand wishes to reiterate its strong commitments to the principles and purposes as enshrined in the treaty. We also stand ready to work with the international community towards the universalization and entry into force of the treaty, as well as the strengthening of the PTS work. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the distinguished representative of Thailand for his statement, and I call upon the distinguished representative of Portugal, His Excellency Mr. Pedro Moutinho de Almeida, the permanent representative. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me first to join previous speakers in the condemnation of the heinous terrorist attack yesterday in Orlando, and to express our deepest condolences to the families and loved ones of the victims. Portugal fully shares the views expressed in the statement made earlier on behalf of the European Union by its High Representative, and I would like to highlight some aspects from a national perspective. I would first like to thank the Executive Secretary, the chair of the PrepCom, and the staff members of the CTBTO for the preparatory work done on this meeting. This event represents an historic moment in the long process towards a clear objective, a ban on nuclear explosions by everyone, everywhere. Having signed the treaty in September 1996 and ratified in June 2000, Portugal remains fully committed to its goals, including by hosting 3 monitoring stations in the Azores archipelago. The effective work of the organizations makes nuclear explosive tests stand today as anomalies. Nevertheless, our work is still incomplete. 2 decades after its signature, the treaty has yet to enter into force. In fact, the importance of the treaty as the treaty's entry into force was clearly demonstrated again recently with the nuclear tests carried out by the DPRK earlier this year. Therefore, Portugal strongly urges the countries that still have not signed on or ratified the treaty, in particular those in Annex 2, to do it as soon as possible. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, education, engagement and emancipation can help us acting collectively and resolutely to bring the treaty into force. On education, we would like to highlight the concrete benefits of the treaty and the organization. In this regard, cooperation amongst countries and engagement with civil society and academia and media are key elements to help enhance public awareness about the effects of nuclear weapon test explosions. The benefits and added value of the treaty to peace, security and non-proliferation can and should be more widely recognized. There can be no denial that even when applying the most stringent criteria, the CTBT is an effective treaty. Concerning engagement, standing beside the countries that have yet not ratified the treaty, accompany them on the next stage of their ratification process is essential. If the work already done by the organization, albeit still in its provisional capacity, is quite remarkable, there is no doubt that when a fully functional and permanent CTBTO is finally in place, the results will be even more impressive and beneficial. Finally, emancipation. Emancipation from what we may call the tyranny of tradition, from what President Kennedy, laying his vision on a ban on nuclear tests in 1963, called, and I quote, "Dangerous defeatists believe that the ban is impossible, that violence is inevitable, and mankind doomed, gripped by forces we cannot control," end of quote. The effective international technical cooperation embodied in the CTBTO, built and maintained by all member states, ratifiers and non-ratifiers alike, demonstrate that it is possible for countries with different perspectives to work collectively together on a collective goal benefiting all. Mr. Chair, Portugal, as one of the Article 14 2015 Vice Presidents, can bear witness to the added value of the treaty and the organization, with concrete examples such as a recent partnership signed between the Portuguese Sea and Atmosphere Institute and the CBTTO. Promoting the CBT is one of Portugal's key disarmament and non-proliferation priorities. We strongly support the continued development of the treaty's goal verification regime. Disarmament and non-proliferation are complex issues. Changes can be slow and oftentimes must be gradual, but the time to bring the CTBT into force is now. Thank you.
I thank the permanent representative of Portugal for his statement, and the next speaker is the distinguished representative of the Holy See, Monsignor Janusz Urbacik, permanent representative, to whom I now give the floor.
Mr. Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset I would like to join previous speakers and convey the Holy See's profound expressions of sympathy and closeness to the families of the victims, as well as to all those who have been touched by the homicidal folly and senseless hatred that has left at least 50 people dead in an attack on a nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Returning to the text of my delegation statement, I am pleased to convey to you the greetings of His Holiness Pope Francis, who, in addressing the United Nations General Assembly on 25 September 2015, urged the international community to work for a world free of nuclear weapons in full application of the Non-Proliferation Treaty in letter and spirit, with the goal of a complete prohibition of these weapons. Pope Francis added, an ethic and a law based on the threat of mutual destruction and possibly the destruction of all mankind are self-contradictory and an affront to the entire framework of the United Nations, which would end up as a nations united by fear and distrust. In order to respond adequately to the challenges of the 21st century, it is essential to replace fear and mistrust with an ethic of responsibility and so foster a climate of trust which values multilateral dialogue through consistent and responsible cooperation between all the members of the international community. The norms embodied in the United Nations Charter, humanitarian law, arms control conventions, and other elements of international law represent an indispensable juridical embodiment of this global ethic of responsibility. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty is one of the cornerstones of the juridical architecture painstakingly put in place to control the global threat posed by nuclear weapons and to move progressively and urgently toward a world free of such weapons. The Holy See is very pleased to take part in this commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the treaty's opening for signature. As the preamble of the treaty makes clear, by constraining the development and improvement of nuclear weapons, the test ban constitutes an effective measure of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation in all its aspects, and a meaningful step in the realization of a systematic process to achieve nuclear disarmament. When the Holy See ratified the CTBT on 18 July 2001, it reiterated its long-standing view that a ban on nuclear tests and on the future development of nuclear weapons, disarmament and non-proliferation are closely linked and must be achieved as quickly as possible under effective international control. Specifically, entry into force of the CTBT is an essential complement to efforts that enforce and strengthen the Non-Proliferation Treaty, as well as the implementation of the CTBT verification regime. Nor should it be forgotten that the CTBT is an important instrument in protecting the environment from the reckless use of our unprecedented technological and scientific advances. Mr. Chairperson, regrettably, contrary to the purposes of the CTBT, states that now possess nuclear weapons are spending enormous sums on major new modernization programs that risk undermining non-proliferation and disarmament measures, as well as international security and stability. The logic of fear, dominance, and self-interest that drive these modernization efforts harken back to the dark days of the Cold War. Moreover, as Pope Francis said in his message to the Vienna conference on 7 December 2014, spending on nuclear weapons squanders the wealth of nations. To prioritize such spending is a mistake and misallocation of resources which would be far better invested in areas of integral human development, education, health, and the fight against extreme poverty. Billions are wasted each year to produce and develop new or improve nuclear weapons. How
Are these expenditures consistent with the purpose of the CTBT and NPT and the goals of nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear disarmament? Today, while commending those states which have decided to ratify the treaty, my delegation wishes to repeat its appeal to the remaining states whose ratification is necessary for the treaty to enter into force. Now is the time to demonstrate courageous leadership on a high sense of political responsibility at the service of the common good and the promotion of a genuine culture of peace. In concluding, I would like to reiterate the importance the Holy See places on the entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and to assure you, Mr. Chairperson, and the international community of the Holy See's full moral support to the solemn act of ratification as an indispensable aspect of the concrete realization of a culture of life, peace and prosperity which can ensure a better tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
I thank the representative of the Holy See for his statement, and I call upon the distinguished representative of Singapore, His Excellency Mr. Fu Kok Kui, the permanent representative. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. At the outset, let me first express my country's deepest condolences to the victims and the families of the horrific and tragic shooting in Orlando over the weekend. Singapore and Singaporeans stand in solidarity with the United States and the American people during this time of grief. My delegation would also like to express our appreciation to you, Mr. Chairman, Executive Secretary Dr. Lassina Zerbo, and the Provisional Technical Secretariat for organizing this meeting to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Mr. Chairman, the CTBTO plays an important role in ending nuclear testing and strengthening the nuclear non-proliferation regime. Over the past 20 years, since its inception, the CTBTO, with its global reach, had proven its value in the detection of nuclear tests, including the most recent one by the DPRK in January 2016. The CTBTO had also contributed to the global community in other ways. In the area of emergency preparedness and disaster mitigation, the CTBTO's International Monitoring System, or IMS, provided important information on the spread of radioactive particles and noble gases during the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident in 2011. The IMS picked up seismic and hydroacoustic data that enabled the Japanese authorities to issue tsunami warnings in a timely manner, thus saving many lives. The CTBTO's exercises and field experiments also enable a regular assessment of the on-site inspection regime to ensure that it will be fully operational once the treaty enters into force. I want to take this opportunity to recognize and to applaud the good work done by the CTBTO, all its past executive secretaries, and its dedicated staff over the past 20 years. Mr. Chairman, the CTBT is key to realizing the vision of a world free of nuclear weapons. It makes clandestine nuclear testing virtually impossible, curbs the development and proliferation of new nuclear weapons, and thereby contributing to the enhancement of international peace and security. Nuclear testing also pollutes water and contaminates the environment with radioactive fallout for generations to come. It is thus in our common interest to have a legally binding prohibition of nuclear explosions in all environments for both military and civilian purposes. But as noted by so many speakers before me, the entry into force of the CTBT is long overdue. We therefore join the voices before me in calling on all countries that have yet to sign and ratify the treaty, in particular the Annex II countries, to do so as soon as possible. Singapore signed the CTBT in 1999 and ratified the treaty in 2001. We will continue to do our part and support all efforts towards a world free of nuclear testing and nuclear weapons. We are currently exploring ways where we can collaborate with the CTBTO Preparatory Commission in capacity building and to support the CTBTO's functions. We hope that the day when the CTBT enters into force, when we have a world free of nuclear tests, when the scientific benefits of the CTBTO's activities can be enjoyed more widely, will come sooner than later. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the distinguished representative of Singapore for his statement, and now I'd like to invite the distinguished representative of Mongolia, His Excellency Mr. Batirgal Gunajev, the permanent representative, to take the floor. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Mr. Chairperson, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, at the outset, I would like to join the previous speakers in condemning yesterday's horrific attack in Orlando, United States, and express our condolences to the families of the victims and wish a speedy recovery for those injured. I want to thank esteemed Foreign Minister of Romania for chairing the opening of this ministerial meeting of the Preparatory Commission. Mongolia strongly supported the negotiations of the CTBT and was in fact one of the first countries to ratify the treaty in 1997 with the vision to halt completely nuclear explosive testing and prevent nuclear proliferation in all its aspects. The past 20 years have been crucial in building up the unprecedented global verification regime. The validity of the verification regime, though not yet completed, has been vividly demonstrated during the explosions of nuclear weapon tests conducted by the DPRK in 2006, 2009, and yet again earlier this year, as well as by the stress tests in the wake of the Fukushima disaster in 2011. As the verification regime of the treaty progresses, the responsibility of all state signatories is to demonstrate leadership and real action to make the CTBT a reality without further delay. In this context, Mongolia calls upon all those remaining Annex II countries to sign and ratify this historic treaty for the benefit of the global peace and security. I also wish to commend every leadership of the PTS and for their tireless efforts in both verification and non-verification activities. In the past, notable progress has been certainly made since Executive Secretary Dr. Lassina Zerbo assumed his duty 3 years ago. In particular, his initiative of establishing the group of eminent persons has proven its effectiveness by raising the profile of the CTBT, as well as the momentum towards the early entry into force of the treaty. Mongolia warmly welcomes the launching of the CTBT Youth Group for the same purpose, mobilizing tomorrow's leaders to advance the treaty's entry into the force. In conclusion, I would like to express our special thanks to the PTS and its Executive Secretary for the preparations of this important ministerial meeting, and assure you, Mr. Chairperson, of our full support and cooperation for the success of this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
I thank the distinguished representative of Mongolia for his statement, and now I would like to invite His Excellency Mr. Laércio António Vinhas, the permanent representative of Brazil, to take the floor. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Thank you. In the outset, let me express sincere condolences of Brazil to the people and government of US in relation to the terrorist attack in Orlando. Brazil associates itself fully with the statement delivered by Grulek and would like to add a few remarks in its national capacity. Mr. Chair, we note with satisfaction the progress made over the last 2 decades by the Preparatory Commission in terms of setting up the machinery for the treaty's implementation. Although most of what is needed for that purpose seems to be in place, there is still no prospect for CTBT's entry into force in a foreseeable future. In light of this situation, the 20th anniversary of the treaty that has not yet been set in motion is, for sure, not a date to be celebrated, but that should not discourage us for stock-taking and making a sober assessment of what we want to achieve with CTBT. Today's event and other activities regarding the 20th anniversary of the CTBT cannot be confined to promoting the treaties into force. While redouble our efforts towards getting the accession by the remaining 8 Annex II states, we should also take this special occasion to ask ourselves about CTBT's significance in the international nuclear non-proliferation and the disarmament regime, which was the very reason states joined the treaty in the first place. If we want to promote new adherence to the treaty, but also ensure continued political support for those states that have already joined it, some important concrete steps must be taken in order to ensure that the CTBT remains a credible and meaningful instrument. In this regard, we cannot condone nuclear doctrines and policies that indicate the determination of nuclear weapon states not only to maintain but also to modernize their arsenals. Such policies are in clear contravention of both the letter and the spirit of CTBT. Narrow, self-interested interpretation of the treaty as a measure only for the cessation of nuclear explosion have the effect to defeating its objective of curbing proliferation and promoting nuclear disarmament. It is disingenuous that some states continue to advocate so-called step-by-step or progressive approach to nuclear disarmament, when the actual steps that by nuclear weapon states point to the opposite direction and undermine the CTBT's relevance. We were encouraged by the fact that the final declaration of the Article 14 conference last September could reaffirm the call on all states to refrain from the development and use the new weapons technologies and any action would undermine the objects and the purpose and the implementation of the provisions of CTBT. That was made to a great extent possible because all states from Latin America and Caribbean have been championship the cause of the integrated and relevance of CTBT. This was most recently restated in the special declaration of the 20th anniversary of CTBT issued by the head of states of CELAC last January. Mr. Chair, the conclusion of the CTBT happened only 1 year after the undefined extension and the strengthening of the review process of NPT. Those developments took place in the aftermath of the end of the Cold War on the understanding that accelerated steps would be taken in order to rid the world of nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, 20 years later, such a goal still remains an elusive and distant one. That notwithstanding an effective end of all nuclear tests and other experiments associated with the modernization of nuclear arsenal might rekindle the perception that CTBT can be a meaningful instrument for nuclear disarmament. At the next anniversaries of the treaty, we hope we will have reasons to come to this conclusion. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Brazil for his statement, and now I call upon the last speaker for this afternoon, Her Excellency Mrs. Emin Berner Fertiglik, the Permanent Representative of Turkey. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by joining the previous speakers in conveying our sincere condolences to the USA and Kazakhstan for the recent terrorist attacks. I would also like to express our appreciation to the Romanian chairmanship for the leadership and excellent cooperation at an important time which marks the 20th anniversary of the opening up for signature of the CTBT. Let me assure you Turkey's full support and cooperation in fulfillment of this important mandate. Allow me also commend Dr. Lassina Zerbo, the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO, and his staff for their tireless efforts to prepare this meeting. The Turkish delegation aligns itself with the statement of the European Union delivered by Her Excellency Federica Mogherini, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, and Vice President of the European Commission, as well as with the statement of the Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative delivered by Germany on behalf of the NPDI. Please allow me to speak in my national capacity to address shortly a few points. Mr. Chairman, Turkey considers the CTBT as an important instrument of the global non-proliferation and nuclear disarmament regime. In our view, a universal and internationally and effectively verifiable cessation of nuclear weapon test explosions and their prohibitions, as provided by the CTBT, continues to be an indispensable goal for achieving international peace and security. Even before its entry into force, the CTBT achieved considerable progress and has a remarkable record of accomplishments. The strong moral standard it has already set is unquestionable. It enjoys today a near universal status with 183 signatures and 164 ratifications. However, despite all the progress achieved both at political and technical level, we regret the fact that 20 years after its opening for signature, it has yet to enter into force. In this regard, we again urgently call on all states who have not yet done so, in particular the remaining Annex II states, to sign and ratify the treaty without any precondition or delay. The number of the remaining states whose ratification is essential for the treaty's entry into force is small, yet it is a challenging task. We must take every opportunity to remind those states they have a moral obligation to turn the moratoria on nuclear test explosions into the binding rule. Mr. Chairman, the relevance and the importance of the CTBT's entry into the force were once again demonstrated following the fourth nuclear test carried out by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in January 2016, which was strongly condemned by the international community. Moreover, this unfortunate development confirmed that the CTBT verification regime is sound and functioning successfully. It has proven to be a valuable investment that no nuclear test goes undetected. Distinguished delegates, taking the opportunity of the 20th anniversary of the opening of the treaty for signature, this year we have witnessed an enhanced political momentum for its universalization and a series of events to mark this important year and increase awareness among policymakers, civil society, academia, as well as the young generation. In this respect, please allow me to express our gratitude once again to Executive Secretary Zerbo for his tireless efforts and his never-ending constructive optimism. Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates, in the last 20 years, Turkey honored her political, financial, and technical commitments stemming from the treaty. Being among the first signatories of the CTBT, we are strongly committed to its objectives and fully support the ongoing efforts to its universalization. As a part of our ongoing support in order to promote an early entry into force of the CTBT, Turkey will host a symposium organized by the Boğaziçi University Kandilli Observatory and Earthquake Research Institute on 6 and 7 October 2016 in Istanbul. The event will provide an opportunity to take stock of the ongoing discussions in the margins of the 20th anniversary activities, with a view to seeking creative solutions to increase the public awareness, both at national and international level, about CTBT's role in global non-proliferation regime and examining the next steps to be taken to achieve entry into force. Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates, what we need now is a final collective determination to work together to achieve the universalization of the CTBT, which has already proven its success by its concrete accomplishments. Let me conclude by quoting the motto of the CTBT's latest billboards: we must finish what we started. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the distinguished representative of Turkey for her statement, and before we adjourn, I will pass the floor to the Secretary of PrepCom for announcement. You have the floor, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to remind that this meeting will resume tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp in Bodrum C on the 4th floor of Building C of the Vienna International Center. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, and meeting is adjourned.